Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Party Election Officer Foster Cummins, Senator, Party Chairman, Mr. Franklin Khan, who serves as Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Deputy Political Leader, Mrs. Joan Williams, and on the platform with me tonight, my parliamentary and cabinet colleague, the Member of Parliament for Laventille West and Minister of Public Utilities, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, party officers all who have journeyed down to the South Coast tonight, P&M standard bearers for the Corporation of Princestown, fellow citizens of the community of Moruga and surroundings, those of you present here in your very large numbers, and those of you listening to us at home, a very good night to you from Basseterre in Moruga. I haven't been counting how many times I've been to this part of the country, but it's always a very special outing for me to come and join you here, usually during election time or when there are festivities of one kind or another. Tonight, I am here as leader of the People's National Movement and as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago to give the assurance once again to the people of the South Coast, from Moruga to Marac, from Grand Chamere, all the way to Black Barrackpore, that the government of Trinidad and Tobago that meets and deliberates in Port of Spain has not forgotten you and will not forget you. But I want to point out to you how it goes. To travel from Port of Spain to Mount Hope is a few minutes. And you stay in touch along the way by good roads and continuous development, and that's an easy trip. So from the center of decision making to Barataria, to Mount Hope, to Arima, to Caranage, to even Chaguanas, it is easy to not lose sight of who is around you and what has to be done. But because of the nature of the geography, it is quite possible that we could be making decisions in Port of Spain, and the people of Charlottesville and Tobago and the people of the South Coast and the Southeast corner, not by any deliberate act, but just by the very fact that the geography means that you are very far away and we get caught up with what is within sight. That year after year, we could be dealing with national issues while your issues are not focused upon. And it's against that background that coming out of government after many years, we in this government, for the first and only time, have on the cabinet table in Port of Spain a minister whose responsibility is to ensure that people like you at the far end of the country, you are not left out of the discussion and the development program. Because we might mean well all the time. Nobody sets out to discriminate against you on the South Coast, or those of you in Charlottesville, or those of you elsewhere away from the center of decision making. But it is just a natural thing that those who are closer, and more so, as Mr. Khan pointed out, the hinge that squeaks gets the oil. But if this hinge in Moruga is not squeaking, you don't get any oil, even though you produce it. So what we have done in this administration is to put a structure in place to ensure that that which we said and we wrote in the national anthem, that as we attempt to deliver the country, that we deliver it against that principle where it says in our anthem, every creed and race finds an equal place. And to do that, you have to have opportunity to participate in what the country is engaged in. Because no amount of singing the anthem or writing the anthem is going to give you here an equal place if the structures, the systems are not there for you to access that equal place. Our Constitution as written and has served us well says that there are certain rights that we enjoy as individuals as long as we can claim citizenship in Trinidad and Tobago. The first section of our Constitution laid out those rights and those privileges, and they are available to every man, woman, or child who qualify to be called and who can lay claim to being a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. But what struck me when I read the Constitution is that the framers didn't just give us rights in the Constitution. The next section gives us the protections to ensure that we can enjoy and access those rights. Otherwise, it is possible to have the rights in the Constitution, but because you have not put things in place to allow us to access them and to protect us from those who will deny them to us, then we could have had the rights and never enjoy them. And it's the same thing in the development program. We know that every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago has a right and a claim to what the country has to offer. But if the systems are not in place to ensure that you here in Moruga have a reasonably good shot at participating in what the country has to offer, it is possible that you can go on for year after year, decade after decade, and possibly centuries, because they are much older countries than we have. But you at one end of the country, at the far end of the country, not enough gets to you, and sometimes it never gets to you. So what we are doing now is ensuring that the development is a bit more balanced. It would cause us now to make some expenditure in this area in such a way that you can be brought closer to the development standard of the country. Against the background of an understanding that I, as a father in Port of Spain, I grew up in Mason Hall, which is away from Scarborough. So the same way you here in Moruga are away from Port of Spain. When I was growing up in Tobago, Scarborough and Charlottesville and Palatuvia and Lansford were in the same situation. Away from the center where things happen. I was just about to enter secondary school when we got electricity in my village 4 miles from Scarborough. Up until then was pitch oil lamp. And 4 miles away from Scarborough, when I come into Scarborough with my grandmother at age 9 and 10, it was like going to New York. And if the PNM didn't come and bring electricity, TNTech, take the service out into Basin Hall and further away, I would have grown up and probably be a full-grown man and never put a light on in my house. But development comes in phases, and as Mr. Khan says, now that we are focusing on you, we will have to make larger and more specific expenditure to do certain things in this area if we want your children to have the same kind of opportunity as our children in and around the Port of Spain area. But I'll tell you something too. There are 2 kinds of expenditures. One is expenditure where you basically get it by being identified as qualifying for cash, and the government pays that to you, like old age pension, disability grant, food card, and so on. But you cannot really focus a life on that and raising a family in the future on that kind of expenditure. The other kind of expenditure is where you, once you're able-bodied and you can work, that you are doing something productive and that thing brings an income to you. The people around the capital city and in the east-west corridor, if you look at the income distribution of the country, you'll find that they are much better off than you. And they have very many opportunities to do something during their working life to earn that income and to support a lifestyle and a family style that's different to yours. And you have to ask yourself, if you want to develop the Moruga area, and by Moruga I mean the general South Coast area with all the communities around in Moruga, what is it that these people can remain in that part of the country and do that they can earn an income and therefore live the way others in the country live because they are earning an income? You might not be doing the same thing that the people in St. James and Diego Martin do, or in Caroni, or in Tobago. But there must be something that you could be doing down here which could bring you an income, create jobs, good jobs, on a sustained basis. And that is why we've identified fishing, forestry, and to some extent, from time to time, depending on the nature, some aspect of light manufacturing. So how did we go about it? The first thing we did, we said that since on your south coast, many of you are fishermen, you know about fishing, and you have access to the sea, and we here have access to the Atlantic Ocean where there are shoals of fish for which there's a market across the country and possibly outside. Like other fishing communities in the country, we will invest significantly, a very large sum of money, building in this country an up-to-date fishing facility to encourage and sustain fishing on the south coast and make that the central pillar of activity on the south coast in Moruga. And the one thing about fish, it is food. It is food. And the one thing about food, unlike building a wall, you build a wall and it's there for 60 or 100 years. Food every 4 hours you need it. And everybody has to eat. And this country has a target, ever saying we want to reduce the food import bill. And Moruga, if you listen to that statement, we are importing $4 billion of food. How much of that can Moruga produce? If you can produce $200 million in fish, that is your earning stream for those of you involved in fishing. And now that you have a good facility coming, you will want to go to sea, you will want to get a boat, you will want to catch that fish, and the market is waiting on you. And the country is waiting on a supply of fish from Moruga. And fish is not only eaten by those who are big, tall, eaten by man, woman, and child. So you have a market out there waiting on you. But I'll give you a caution. There's another market in the world, a market for illicit products called drugs. And the minute you have a port, 1 or 2 smart persons believe that's a place to use to commit crime. I'm putting you on notice now that we're going to spend a lot of money building this very fine fishing port on the south coast in Moruga to give you opportunity for sustained development in fishing. And we also going to spend a lot of money ensuring that it does not become another drug port in Trinidad. That much is going to have to happen. Then, of course, there's something else which you have, which others do not have. You have soil, good soil, and you have space. The reason why so much forest is growing around here and the bush grows up so fast is that in very many areas around Moruga, you have a resource which has taken millions of years to develop. On the surface, soil is a natural resource which any country should want to preserve and put to use, because it is in the soil that you grow the food. So therefore, what we will do is to ensure that you make more use of that soil. And to start the process, we understand that if all the farmers go out and start to produce, you produce goods that perish after a few days. If you pick the produce and it's not sold and eaten after a few days, it's lost and the farmer's time has been wasted and the food is lost. We don't want to do that. We want to ensure that as we encourage you to produce more and more, when you produce it, there is a system to take it from you, and your post-harvest handling and the preservation of the product, that is what we call agro-processing. Today, if I want some pigeon peas to make a pilau, chances are the tin of pigeon peas come from Santo Domingo. Well, from here on in the very near future, when I want a pilau in Port of Spain, it must come from Santo Moruga. And all of you down here know how good it is to clear a piece of land and to put down some peas, and you know when to pick it. And if you can take it to a place where it is purchased at a good price, as long as you can produce it, it's purchased at a good price, and it's properly canned, and it heads for the market in Port of Spain. And when we produce enough for Trinidad, we could export it across wherever there's an external market. You're now exporting. And if you do that, you now can remain in this area, doing things to earn money, looking after your children with pride and dignity, and not just relying on a government handout which you qualify for only when they get old enough for old age pension, or only those of you who unfortunately have physical challenges and so on, and you get a little grant and a little thing to get by. You now can plant as much peas as you want and sell as much peas as you want, and the more you plant, the more you earn, and the better you are than many people elsewhere in the country. That is what we're talking about. And to do that, we need to get in and get out. Your road infrastructure, you would have seen us already in this first year of this PLM government focusing on making sure that you can drive comfortably to Moruga, and then once you can get there, the access in and out is what is going to make the place easy to come to, and you living here not feeling that you're living behind God's back. And there's something else too. I'm sure somewhere in this audience is somebody who works in the wooding industry, where they deal with lumber and timber and so on. In this country, we have a fair amount of teak and in some areas some pine, which were planted by the colonial masters in the 1940s. We have been the beneficiary of those plantations, where today in the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, every year they give out, by way of leases and harvesting contracts, permission for the sawmillers to go in and cut a certain amount of these logs and take them to their sawmills, and that creates employment. It creates a high-value product, and in fact so high value that we have had to stop the exportation of teak logs, because other persons outside the country will buy it from us, but we want to harvest the logs here, mill them here, create teak lumber here, and we could have a teak furniture industry here for export and certainly for local demand. But they were not planted by us. They were planted by the colonial masters. We are saying that we need to go back there and put more plants on the ground, even more species, because today more than ever, commercial forests demand high prices in the international market. In fact, in some international markets in Europe, they will not buy teak unless it has come from a planted plantation like ours. They will not buy wild mahogany because they're talking about preserving the natural forests. But where you have cultivated stands of timber, you have a ready market. It takes a while for it to grow, but it doesn't take much from you while it's growing. And that is why under the current Minister of Agriculture, one of the programs that we are pursuing now, using the CPEP expenditure, which is already made, is that we have created 2 nurseries. We went out early in the year and we collected tens of thousands of seedlings, and we are creating seedlings, growing them, so by next year, rainy season, we could begin to plant stands of those forests, and we're going to plant more teak, we're going to plant mahogany, we're going to plant cedar, we're going to plant apamat, we're going to plant roble, and go back to all our trees that we have overutilized. And all of them are valuable. And we will use our talent, we will use our current resources to nurture those stands. And 10 to 15 years from today, we will have plantations in the south of Trinidad worth millions of dollars for the effect we've gone in. And that is why some people could stay in this area getting involved in agroforestry and commercial timber forestry. There are people in the north who buy as much soursop as they can get, as much sorrel as they can get, because these juices are now very fashionable and in great demand. But of course, I don't know anywhere in Trinidad where I can go and walk through 5 acres of soursop or 2 acres of guava. But I'm going through Cuba, and I'm going through acres and acres and acres of mango. And when the morning comes and they serve you mango juice for breakfast, you want to ask for more. And the pink guava of Cuba is a Caribbean fruit that we must grow here in Trinidad and Tobago. And if we're growing it here, then our children must eat and drink it. That is how we will reduce the food import bill. And Moruga, you have a big role to play in that, because the government has passed an instruction downwards that we want a much larger input of local produce in the school feeding program. The school feeding program absorbs a lot of expenditure where we are ensuring that our children at school get at least 1 or 2 good meals. And to do that, we tie them back to the farmers. So parents in Moruga, encourage your children to understand that lunch and breakfast don't only come from the fridge and a plastic packet. Those plastic packets are merely salt and fat that somebody else cooked somewhere else and sent to you. We have to encourage our children to eat well and eat what we produce. And the mantra in the current Ministry of Agriculture is that we produce what we eat and eat what we produce. And if we do that, Moruga, you will be doing very well in supplying what we eat. We are talking about a comprehensive review of national development. When you do these things in your community, a number of good jobs will be created because it requires a certain kind of management structure and support structure and involvement of human personnel to make this work. And as long as you are willing to work and there's opportunity for you to work, then you are on the way to national development. It is when you're willing to work and there's nothing to work on, nothing to work with, because there's always something to work for. We have to ensure that we create opportunity. And what is happening now in this government, as we sit down and deliberate with our technicians in the public service, with the experts around, the one question we are asking ourselves and we are answering is, what can the people in the district do to give themselves an opportunity to participate in the national economy? Because if you don't have that opportunity to participate in the national economy, that is when you end up on that cycle of perpetual poverty. Because nobody will pay you money because you don't have money. They will pay you to do something for them, and more so, especially if you pay yourself to do something for yourself. A lot of opportunities for self-employment exist in agriculture. But for agriculture to prosper, you need good road contact. Long ago, when my grandfather and my father were farmers, all you wanted was a donkey or two and you're good to go. Nowadays, to be a farmer, I understand it. The farmer wants to have a Hilux. He wants to have a pickup. He wants to drive to his farm. He or she, they want to be able to harvest and put in the vehicle and head for the market. So the government is going to ensure that you have proper access roads so your vehicles can take you to your farm. But then, of course, if you have to wait for somebody on the outside, far away, to determine which road is repaired, when it is repaired, how it is repaired, and worse, you spend money on contractors doing the work, and under no supervision they do bad work or no work, you are going to remain in this situation forever. What local government reform is saying to you is that there's a role for the central government and there's a role for you here in the district. I just outlined to you 2 central government initiatives. The building of the port, that's a central government initiative. The establishing of the nurseries, embarking on a nationwide program to ensure that there's planting material for the forest that we will plant, that's a central government arrangement for now. But as we give you authority, when you vote us into office on November 28th, very soon that responsibility of the planting of those forests will become your responsibility in Princestown. And if you set out in Princestown to plant 500 acres or 200 acres of forest every year, after 10 years we have 2,000 acres of this south coast under commercial forest. And for the next 5 or 6 years, you have to ensure that during the dry season, you protect them and they don't fall prey to forest fire, and that idiots don't go in there and chop them down and so on and so on. As soon as they get past that danger stage, you just leave them to nature and they develop and become valuable for you. But you have to put that nurturing in the beginning. And as you do that, among you will have the elderly who can't climb the hills and go into the valleys and work. And they have to get support of some kind. We want to be sure that when central government at the level of the parliament allocate support for such persons, that such persons get what the parliament offer them. And more importantly, your social service systems in these parts may not be what they're supposed to be, because there might not even be a social service officer who walks through your district. But if we put the responsibility for social service delivery in the hand of the Princeton Corporation, or some aspect of it, or all aspects of it, then such officers will be available to you here in the community. And their job will be to know exactly who is who and who is entitled to what. And in that way, you get better management and better reporting of what is available to you. I can't say to you tonight what will be available to you, because the economics are changing. We know we are going through a very difficult patch now, and we are working towards improving that. But whatever is available to you, you must be able to get it and to make the most of it. Make no mistake about it. Even as you are being left behind down here, there are people in the system now, under the current arrangement, who understand the system very, very well and make it work very well for them, while you down here being left behind. And we are saying to you, we want to change that and give you an involvement in the decision making to prevent that from happening. I'm the father of 2 children at home now. Well, not now, they're pretty much on the way out. But I still regard them as my responsibility in some way. And I watch them grow up. And I feel very proud of how they have grown up. But I always compare their life with the life that I have had growing up in Tobago. My children are fortunate to have grown up in an urban area with systems in place for them, and they took advantage of it and did well for themselves. But then I go out in different parts of the country, and I see parents with children, and those children are swimming against a very swift current. And in many instances, that current will overcome them. And because of where they're located or what is happening to them, it is not that at birth they were condemned to not doing well. It was that they unfortunately found themselves in locations or in systems which are not working for them. And the difference between those children and my children is simply that, as I've just described. Happen to be in the right place at the right time, or in the wrong place in the wrong system. It is my intention, my hope, and the work that we're putting in now, that when we make these changes, the objective of these changes is to ensure that the children of these parts of the country have a reasonable opportunity to do as well as the children everywhere else in the country. So when I pass through Moruga and I see the children coming out of school, I go down to Marak, Ganshame, and wherever I go, I must be able to understand that these children are on their way to a bright future as the children in St. James and in Scarborough and in Carenage. It must not be that because you have come from this end, the way the thing works, that your odds are so long that there's hardly a chance that you will do well. And of course, if there is no economic activity, very many of you will leave this area and go into other areas looking for opportunity. And that very act by itself is part of the perpetual poverty, because the more of you who leave, the less the size of the market. And usually, many of your best and brightest would leave. Let me explain something to you. When I grew up in Tobago, for all my years in primary school and secondary school, I knew that Tobago had 40,000 people. You're seeing babies being born every day, but it's still 40,000 people. And then the argument like this was presented in Tobago, that the reason why people are leaving is because there's nothing here for them to do. And as long as it is like that, you could have as many people being born in the area. Many people are just waiting to be able to leave. And if that is the situation in community or country, you could never get the best of that community or that country. And then Tobago got the right to look after its affairs and got more responsibility and were directing their resources in a slightly different way. And you know what? The population of Tobago is now 65,000. And the movement from Tobago to Trinidad has virtually ceased as an economic pull away from Tobago. And more so, as we're talking now about expanding opportunity in Tobago, I guarantee you that there'll be a flow of Trinidadians to Tobago looking for opportunity, because people move from one place to another looking for opportunity. And once they could find it within the nation's border, they will move. You will know, I'm sure many of you here will know, very many people who were born in this district, but who just disappeared out largely because of an absence of economic opportunity. Well, the teacher who is teaching in Moruga, the condition must be such that that teacher must want to stay and enjoy the quality of life that a teacher enjoys around many other areas of the country. The farmer who is farming down here, we're saying that he must be able to sell his produce in such a way that he can stay and continue farming. That is not to say that you are confined to the area, but you mustn't be leaving because there is no opportunity for you to do anything. So what we are aiming to create for you is opportunity. And the government has a role to play in putting down the foundation, and you have a role to play in building on that foundation. And the number of stories you build on will depend on you. So we all have a responsibility in it. So this local government reform that we're talking about, we're saying that the country has a certain tax base. And one of those tax bases is the collection of local taxes, land and building taxes. Now, Moruga is not a densely populated area, nor is the Princeton area as compared to other parts in the country. So while we would say to you, yes, you collect and keep your taxes, that is not going to amount to very much. And that will not be able to be as useful in this area as it is in Diego Martin or in Port of Spain, where you have many more tens of thousands of houses. But the system will allow central government to share the national pie with you in such a way that you will get enough on a reasonable formula, where there will be coming to you from central government enough to allow you to use it in a way that gives you a standard of living comparable to others in other parts of the country. Because this country earns its revenues from resources owned by all of us. And the resources that end up putting money in the treasury are exposed to a claim from all of us. And it's only when we decide to see it in that way that people in Moruga, in Mayaro, in Sangre Grande, and other areas which have been behind the developmental curve, that now we're saying, let us put systems in place to allow these people to have greater access to what the country has to offer. There are benefits for you in local government reform. And the benefits come from you starting out by selecting people of good character, good record, good potential to put them to represent you in the corporation in Princeton. Start with that. At the level of the central government and the parliament, we are saying that we are going to give those people more authority and more responsibility. So if you send good people into those offices and the parliament make the changes to allow those people to now have responsibility for looking after you, then you'll be a lot better off than being looked after by nameless, faceless people in the other end of the country. You will be responsible for ensuring that in each of these communities, the school is kept up to a proper standard, because the Princeton Corporation will be responsible for maintenance of your schools and your school surroundings. You will have within your community your health center. The Princeton Corporation will be responsible, if only by administrative sharing of burden, responsible for ensuring that your health center is up to standard. And with respect to staffing and supplies, arrangements will be put in place where your corporation has some involvement, either in oversight or in decision making, to ensure that what you have in your health center is what you need, and then you get the same basic service as others anywhere else in the country. And of course, to maintain your infrastructure, you know that any road is as good as its drainage. And therefore, the corporation will be responsible for ensuring that when you get your resources, you use it in such a way, you prioritize, and you ensure that the people that you hire, that they do the work that they're being paid for, and in that way, your roads and your drains can be properly maintained. And of course, it's under PLM government, which I had the opportunity of operating as Minister of Housing and Settlement. In the housing program, we probably was the main ministry that carried out the PLM government's instructions that 10% of government contracting must be reserved for small contractors. And in that way, we don't allow the sardines to only always feeding, the sharks to always feed and the sardines to starve. Because some of those small businesses do as good work as the larger businesses. And some of them will grow into medium-sized businesses and sometimes may go on to become big businesses. But we are saying, give them an opportunity to participate in the state's contracting. So the supply of goods and services, if you have small contractors within your district, those small contractors, you reserve approximately 10% for them. You know what that means? It means that when the corporation gets money to do work for you, its first priority must be to see whether there are people within the borders of the corporation who can do the job. And if there aren't, then the job goes outside, if the prices are in the same order. But then they must have a mindset to want to encourage you here and to know you, to know where you are, to know what you can do, and to support you based on your performance. And if we look at it like that, all over the country this is happening. What we are seeing from this vision is greater economic activity, greater responsibility, greater accountability, greater value for money. Because I can tell you, I was in a program a few years ago, George Mbala's program, and he asked me, how much of government money do I think is working for the taxpayer? And I thought of it, and I said to him about 40%. And I still maintain that position. It is my view that it's only about 40% of what government spends, government gets value for. That means 60% is either wasted or stolen. If we manage to change that, without even increasing the amount of revenues coming into the government, we could change the lives of a lot of people in this country. Because if what I said there is true, that 60% is supporting a small minority who is doing magnificently well. But it's the other 40% that's serving all the rest of us. Well, we want to raise that 40% up to 60%, to 70%, to 80%, and the target is to 100%. And you could only do that by breaking the current mold that holds us into that arrangement. I know you can be honest with yourself, and you, every one of you in this large audience tonight, if you're doing an exam now and asked to point out where government money is wasted or stolen or mishandled, you could point to it. And some of you might know individuals who are benefiting from it. And so bad is it that some people think that it is a right and an entitlement. And they are so bold-faced about it that if Angel Gabriel come down here tomorrow, they intend to curl up his wings to live the way they want to live. I mean, I've been in politics for a long time in this country. And I've been in the government. But from the office of Prime Minister, I'm seeing it in a way that I have not seen before. You have no idea of the level of corruption and bad behavior in Trinidad and Tobago. And every time I have to say, good heavens, it is the taxpayer who's taking the beating here. Who stands up for the taxpayer? Who is going to defend the taxpayer? Because all those who have been doing extremely well, they don't want any change. They want it to remain the way it is because it's working well for them. Well, I'm telling them tonight, it's not working well for Moruga. And I speak for Moruga, and Dr. Lovell Francis, he speaks for Moruga as well, and Fitzgerald Hines and the PNM government, we speak for Moruga and Trinidad and Tobago. So every now and then, you will hear some complaint about the government do this and the government do that. And the government will tell you, yes, we've done this and we've done that, so that we could raise that 40% higher towards 100%. I was here until Mr. Hines came to me in the Prime Minister's office and showed me the numbers. I had no idea, while being a loudmouth in the Parliament, I had no idea that we bought 2 boats from foreigners and paying the foreigners 5 times the price of the boat to drive the boat to Tobago. We who took BOAC from the British and flew planes across the world for 50 years, we can't carry a boat to Tobago. And those who are doing well want to preserve it like that. So the minute Mr. Hines intervened to break the cycle, you hear a minister of the last government saying, oh, corruption, corruption, corruption. It's corruption to him. You know, Capo said, well, his joke to you is dead to me, you know, right? They want it to remain the same way, the same way. If we are going to build a road, it must not cost more than the materials and the labor and a small profit margin. Mustn't cost more. Let me give you all an example. We are going to build a police station in Carnage on a flat piece of land. We have just built 2 police stations. I'm going to open one. It started under the last government. It's being finished under us. It's going to be opened on Friday morning. St. Joseph Police Station. A police station is a place to put police, right? And there are certain things you have to have in a police station. So the police station, a modern police station being built in St. Joseph, we just finished it. We said, okay, build one exactly like that in Carnage, on a flat piece of land. So there's no hill to cut, no swamp to drain, no pile to drive. I, as Prime Minister, gave an instruction, use the same set of drawings that we use in St. Joseph and build it basically the same way in Carnage. So St. Joseph Police have a new station, Carnage Police have a new station. Isn't that clear? When they came to the cabinet last week, Thursday, cabinet note for us to approve to move forward to the Carnage Police Station. $65 million to build a police station. But that is not what caught my attention. What caught my attention is that in the $60-odd million is $9.5 million of architect fees. So you have a building built in St. Joseph with architectural drawings which the government own. You're going to build the same building in Carnage, but somewhere in the system, you know, remember that word system? Somewhere in the system, somebody could put $9.5 million for architect's fees for the same drawings that you used to build the St. Joseph Police Station. You understand? Who is standing up for the taxpayer? And there are people who don't want that change. Well, I have sent that back out the cabinet door, and I've issued new instructions today, which is the same instructions from last week, last month. Build in Carnage the same one you build in St. Joseph with the same drawings, and don't come back anywhere near this cabinet with $65 million. Yes, it should cost less because the St. Joseph station had the cost of the drawings. So therefore the Carnage station should cost less because that cost shouldn't be in there. Yeah? You think it's easy? You all think it's easy? And there are people in the system who are prepared to defend that tooth and nail. And they have their friends to speak for them. There's another one I could tell you about right now, which I stopped today, $1.7 billion. Trying to shove that down the throat of the government. And fight as we might. You think because Kamala and them leave government corruption done? Well, you're making a mistake. Those for whom the system work well, it matters not who in office, PNM, UNC, or the alphabet, they know how to look after themselves. And therefore, it takes a PNM government with a will and a wish and an intention to defend you to ensure that they don't prevail. And I make no apologies for anyone for defending the taxpayer and you, the little people of Moruga and Marak and elsewhere in this country. If you have any idea what's going on in your name, you might carry on a revolution bigger than the French Revolution. But out of ignorance, you know, Sparrow sang a calypso, and he talked about, you know, those people who, the ones who are recognized in the country as the ones who should be recognized. You, in these parts of the country, you are the ones to be recognized. Because you are not creating as half of the trouble for the government as persons elsewhere who are doing well. So tonight, understand something. What we're saying to you on November 28th is to support the government to bring about changes for your benefit. Very simple. Also, support people whose record is one that you can trust and that you can defend, and people who will look after your assets in a way to ensure that you don't only get crumbs, but that you get a good slice of the national bed. Within 1 year of making a commitment to you, you've got a Ministry of Rural Development, and a senior Minister of Government is in there, Minister of Rural Development. Within that 1 year period, we conducted the consultation on this process. We did not delay this election under the guise that we were not ready. It's an ongoing process. You can vote in this election, you should vote in this election, you must vote in this election to encourage the process to go forward. We want to know that as we go to Parliament with the first draft of the bill, parliamentarians of all sides in the Parliament will have something to work with, which came out of the consultation that took place nationwide. And as the Parliament is deliberating in preparing the legislation that will take a few months into next year, we want to know that we are doing that with your support, because you would have told us on November 28th, go forth and make those changes for our benefit, because we need those changes for our benefit. And when the legislation is made available, it will take a few months. It is my expectation that the Attorney General's office should have that legislation in Parliament by the end of the second quarter in the next year. You would have elected our members into the corporation. There's work going on in beginning the transitional arrangements, because we have to amend a number of existing laws to create the space for the new responsibilities. That will be going on. The technicians will be dealing with those who are in the corporation. You talk to anybody who is in local government and they will tell you they have 1,000 ideas as to what could change for the better. That will be going on as the law is being passed. And when the law would have been passed to say what should happen from there going forward, it's at that stage that the actual change would have been made. And I have every confidence in you here in Moruga, as I've said elsewhere in the country, in Siparia, in Chagonas, in Sangre Grande, we're going on Thursday, and elsewhere in the country. I have confidence that you, the people, have produced from among you enough people who can manage your affairs at the local level so that you can have a better quality of life based on what is available to you. And those of you in the country districts, if we manage these districts better, there is the opportunity for you to have an even better quality of life than some persons in the urban areas. Because there are some things that you have done here that they don't have. The peace and mind of nature at its best. The community spirit of neighbor loving neighbor and child being brought up by the village. You have that still, preserve it. But you must do so with the confidence that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is a government for all of Trinidad and Tobago. And that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is a Prime Minister for all of Trinidad and Tobago. But we are not the only ones with a voice in this country. There are others who speak too. And when they speak, you may very well find that they're trying to mislead you. Very often they lie to you. And of course, they have support in that. But don't let that sidetrack you. You know, I've been talking for the entire campaign on this exercise, this aspect of the ongoing exercise. They were saying it wouldn't happen. In fact, when we spoke about the Ministry of Rural Development in the general election, opponents of ours were saying, that don't make no sense. It wouldn't happen. The PNM only saying that. Of course, we didn't argue with that. When it fell to us to appoint a cabinet, we did exactly what we say we would do. Well, let's stop that argument now. The next one is, we are going to consult widely in the country. They said, no, it wouldn't happen. The PNM is a dictatorship and a la 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 la. We consulted, Minister Franklin Khan consulted the entire Trinidad, 14 corporations, major consultations. And we took what you said on board. They can't say we didn't consult. Now we say the law is being drafted, shaped by what you told us and what we think should happen, leading, because there are those who are leading and those who are being led. But we all have the same objective to get to a better place. They can't say it's not being drafted. Now I'm hearing now that what we are saying is too much to happen unless we amend the Constitution. You know what that means? They are looking for an opportunity to obstruct the law when we come to the Parliament. You would think that something that has got such widespread acceptance in the country, that's something that should be done. In fact, they themselves are saying, we have been talking about this for years and it has not happened. But as Mr. Khanna said to you, Moruga and the rest of Trinidad, your time has come. Tobago time came 36 years ago. For 36 years, the Tobagonians have been enjoying the benefits of the Tobago House of Assembly, which has the same things we are offering you now, which is the ability to manage your revenues collected within your district, the ability to look after your infrastructure, the ability to do training within your corporation, be responsible for the environment, be responsible for health and safety, for social services. Tobago has been doing that now for 36 years. And now that your time has come, there are those who are saying, no, we will have to interfere with the Constitution. You know why they're saying that? You know why they're saying that? Because if we convert this into an exercise of the Constitution, it may very well mean that it requires a special majority. They will want to put into the pot something that causes it to require a special majority. Or if there is anything which is already in the pot that requires a special majority, they would like that to be the case. Because once that is the case, rest assured that they will not support it. And that is why you are required to vote resolutely, strongly, and totally for the People's National Movement. Because if you give them a window to look in, that's how they'll behave. And I'm not making this up, you know. The same way I could boast proudly about PNM's unchallenged record in developing Trinidad and Tobago and making the decisions as and when they have to be made. What is their record? They were in government. We were in opposition. We said that the Privy Council in London is too far away physically and otherwise from Trinidad and Tobago. So our final court of appeal should not be in London. And I'm not just here talking esoterically about breaking the colonial bounds. I'm talking about wanting to get to the step of the court and can't get to cross the ocean because you can't afford the plane ticket. And if you could afford the plane ticket to go to London, you have to hire a British barrister, and you don't have the $1 million to do that. So therefore, the court is there as your final court of appeal. but you can't access it. I spoke to you earlier on about the Constitution that gives you rights, but it also gives you pathways to access it. Well, one of those pathways is blocked by the travel and cost arrangement in London. You here in Moruga, if you are wronged and you want to go to the Privy Council or Final Court of Appeal, I defy you to show me 5 people in Moruga who even know what the Privy Council is. So it's only those who are rich in the pocket, have the means to do so, can access the Privy Council. So we in the opposition, we agreed with the Pandey government of the UNC that we will make our Final Court of Appeal not the Privy Council in London, but the Caribbean Court of Justice that is on Charlotte Street in Port of Spain. And with PNM support, we brought the headquarters of the Caribbean Court of Justice on Charlotte Street with PNM support. The minute they lose the election, that was the end of the access of the people of Trinidad and Tobago to any opportunity to use the Caribbean Court of Justice on Charlotte Street. So we now end up with a situation now where our country is hosting a court of appeal, which is being used by our Caribbean brothers and sisters. But as a result of UNC bad behavior and don't care about country and always about party and self, we can't use the Caribbean Court of Justice because they who brought it here with our support suddenly find we can't and shouldn't use it. And of course, as we fought that case, they said they want a referendum to decide if we should bring it here. When you were bringing it here, you didn't want referendum. After you brought it here, when challenged, you say you want referendum. 5 years in office, no referendum. And then, of course, they came after with nonsense telling you, you know what? We will allow the court to be our final court for criminal proceedings, but not for civil proceedings. We said you are talking foolishness because the treaty does not allow that. And then Ramlogan and Kamala Prasad Basseterre Senior Counsel, that was their position. We end up no jurisdiction for civil, none for criminal, because the way they were talking, it couldn't happen. I will tell you, as I speak to you now, the Commissioner of Police is on his 8th 10 days. Every 6 months he gets 10 days. It is so ridiculous that he went on leave. And as he was about to come out from leave to go to work the Monday morning, Friday evening, he didn't know what uniform to put on because he didn't know if he was commissioner or not. And they expect that that is the best arrangement to fight crime in a country where criminals taking over our streets and our neighborhoods. And while that is happening, the same opposition that will not assist us in getting a proper commander put in place in a substantive position to run the police service, every night up and down the country bawling, oh Lord, the PNM, the PNM, the PNM, and crime going up and they're counting murders. As if you don't know that they are the opposition, that they're obstructing. We in the cabinet, we told you in the opposition, put us in office, and when we go there, we will change the order so as to allow the process to begin to appoint a commissioner of police. Well, we did that. You know what? They so want a commissioner of police like we do, that they went to court to ask the court to stop us from trying to appoint a commissioner of police. The court made some changes, but the court upheld that they could proceed to appoint a commissioner of police. We are the only country in the world that as a sovereign nation, strangling ourselves to appoint a commissioner of police. But that suits some people. That suits some people. Because the same people who are trying to obstruct it, not helping, they are the ones overstating the number of murders in the country. Going and calling press conference and lying about the number of people who got killed in the country. You know, and of course, as crime takes place, trying to ascribe crime to people who they believe that their lies can work for them. Somebody bringing $2 million in cash in a container. We are waiting to hear from the police and all the authorities who did that and when they will hold them. the opposition leader knows, and she knows me and my friend, and calling on me to account. And you know, if I respond to her tonight, you get another editorial saying that we ain't talking the issues. Well, maybe they're right, because the issue is this. The same way you know who bring in the money, and is my friend, I suspect you know who bring in the marijuana and the chicken, who was your friend. And I'm sure he was so much of your friend that he must, you know, if I have a friend and I bring in a container of marijuana and I know you smoking, I give you some. And after you burn enough in the bedroom, you put some on the windowsill. And when they find it on the windowsill, it's no longer marijuana, it's a plant-like substance. And then all the policemen who were there, when they found the plant-like substance, they now suddenly get all kinds of promotion and favors and leave buyouts. And then the police service that they want to fight murderers is months now they're investigating this plant-like substance. But let anybody in Moruga snort any plant-like substance and see how fast they'll jail or left behind. So you see, they had a video with a government minister in a hotel in Cascade. A drunken man on a galloping horse with a hearing aid that fall out his ears, know who the minister was. But the prime minister didn't know. All she knew is that whoever was out the cabinet, the whole government out the cabinet, and she's now picking them by specialty to come back in. We want no part of Arnold Roberts and live sport and all of that of the last government. And I'm saying tonight to UNC supporters, I have no difficulty with my party and my country and the politics of this country being one as it is in the Westminster system for now, that you support who you want to support. You are free to support who you want to support. I have friends in the UNC, I have friends in the COP, I have friends in the TOP, and we in the PLM will love to beat them on election day. But to go out there and vote for people whose behavior is like that is to encourage them to brutalize you in the way that you have been brutalized. So on November 28th, you have a choice, a very clear choice. You can vote for a government that is stable, a government you can trust, a government that is visionary, a government that is dealing competently with a very difficult economic downturn, ensuring that the country stays on an even keel, and we're looking for opportunities for growth. And you could vote for candidates that have been screened and selected by a political party which for 60 years have been on the political trail serving you in and out of government. Or you could vote for others who have demonstrated that as far as they're concerned, election is about office. Office is about money for themselves and their wealth for their family and their friends, and you and the devil could take the hindmost. So tonight, Moruga, once again I'm here with you. Whether you live in Marak, La Lune, Barakpur, Basseterre, Galchemer, Bois-Jean-Jean, wherever you live, and of course, anybody from Samuel Cooper here? Well, all right, all of you, you are required to come out and support us in the PNM because we are here to support you. So Moruga, Princestown, your corporation, you haven't given it to us for quite a while. Give it to us in 2016 and let us work for you and work with you. And when you would have done that, on the night of November 28th, even if it rains during the day, you take time and come out and get yourself to the polls. Don't vote alone. Take your friend, take your neighbor, take your family. Vote solidly for the People's National Movement. Vote for the Balize. And when you do that, I want to hear you loud from the South Coast on the night of November 28th, when we would have won all these corporations, won all these seats, and you would be shouting like I would be shouting, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.
get a writing and reinventing.